Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. My From Now Until Darkness Claims Us cup. Yesterday was my birthday, so I got a huge peach green tea lemonade from Starbucks, and I saved it for today. So I'm drinking part of it now. Today's video is going to be a book unhaul. This has been long overdue, and so I know I'm gonna have to go through these really quickly, because if not, this video is going to take for absolutely ever. And some of these I've already touched base with some other videos, but let's just get into it. So the first few books I'm going to be unhauling, I actually just talked about in my video that just went up recently, which is books that I had planned to read. It was a challenge that I gave myself a year to read them, and if I didn't read them, I got rid of them. Autumn's Tithe by Hannah Parker is one of those, as well as Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis, Jade Fire Gold by June C.L. Tan, To Best the Boys by Mary Weber, Bone Spindle by Leslie Vedder, Poster Girl by Veronica Roth, Silver Under Nightfall by Ren Chupeco, and Lost in Time by A.G. Riddle. Oh, along with Forest of Souls by Lori M. Lee. So let's get into the other books that I'm planning on getting rid of. Hollowed by Jessica S. Taylor. This was a Sleepy Hollow retelling. I liked this, but it was a little bit disappointing for me. I didn't like it as much as I thought I was going to. And for that reason alone, I'm getting rid of it, just because I'm desperately running out of space in my shelves. And so I'm trying to be a lot more ruthless of books I'm getting rid of. Even books that I've liked, but just don't feel like I need to have it in my collection. Like, I'm just trying to be a lot more brutal and cutthroat about books that I'm keeping. So this one did not make the cut. But she is an indie author, and I would recommend you check her out. Kind of the same vein, Kiss of Death by Alice Wilde. I may finish this series listening to it, but this one was just kind of like okay. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. But an indie author I also think you should check out. And these are ones that I just decided I'm going to get rid of, even if I do end up reading them at another point. Because some of these, even if I'm unhauling them, it doesn't mean that it sucks and I read it or something like that. It just means that I'm getting rid of it out of my collection, but I may pick it up at the library at some point in the future. That's just a caveat for this whole video. But The High Mountain Court by A.K. Mulford and The Witch's Blade, which is book 2 in the same series by A.K. Mulford. I just don't have desire to read these right now, so I'm going to go ahead and pass them along. I think these are also the indie published editions. Miss Lattimore's Letter by Suzanne Elaine. This is probably a very cute book. I just don't feel the need to keep it around. If I do listen to it in the future, I can do that, but just was going to get rid of it. The woman who never made a match of her own is making matches for everyone else in this hilarious Regency-era comedy of manners. Sounds funny. Sounds good. I'm just letting this one go. I think this is a book that I got for free with a purchase, and it's The Shadow-Bound Queen, Court of Ravens and Ruin by Eliza Rain. Indie edition. It was like a buy one, get one free kind of a situation, and I don't need this, so I'm getting rid of it. These next two I'm getting rid of simply because I got special editions of them, and that is Dance of Thieves and Vow of Thieves by Mary E. Pearson. I'm actually finishing the trilogy In This World, the Remnant Chronicles, that trilogy, soon. So then I can potentially get to these, but I don't need these editions. With these were also the indie published editions, and I just don't feel the need to hang on to them. I think I'm going to listen to them at some point, but I don't feel the need to have them just sitting on my shelves, and that is the Plated Prisoner series by Ryman Kennedy, first one being Gild, Gleam, Glint, Glow. This is one that I was interested in. I should stop saying that. I was interested in all of these, or else I wouldn't have gotten them. The next one is Curious Tides by Pascala Lascelles. For tides that drown and tides that bind, tides with voices not all kind, moon-kissed tides with pitch black eyes, and those that dance neath dangerous skies. Yup. I'm sorry, I can't get into a lot of these because we would be here for just absolutely ever. Next one is the Bookish Box edition of Blood Orange by Karina Hawley. I think this edition is really beautiful, but I read I think 1 or 2 of this author's works, and I wasn't the biggest fan, so I'm going to pass this along. And these just didn't make the cut. I got all of these secondhand, and while I did like them, I just felt like I don't need to have a physical copy on my shelf. I can talk about books and enjoy books, but also not want it represented on my shelves as the books that I love. So this is the Wayward Children series by Shannon McGuire. Every Heart a Doorway, Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Beneath the Sugar Sky, In an Absent Dream. This one was really good. Come Tumbling Down, Where the Drowned Girls Go, and Lost in the Moment and Found. And then I was getting rid of these, not for any particular reason other than just downsizing. I'm actually really interested in reading them, and I will read them someday, I think, but Ledge by Stacey McEwen and Chasm by Stacey McEwen. Again, I want to read these, I just haven't, and so I was just going to pass these along. Next is the Fairy Loot edition of A Fragile Enchantment by Alison Saft. It's a pretty edition. I read this, and I just ended up not loving it, so I don't need to keep it around. The Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu. This is the Owl Crate edition. I wanted to read this for a very long time, but I just haven't. I got this a long time ago, and I've never picked it up, and I'm not sure that I have the desire to right now. I do appreciate the feminist elements of this, so I do think I want to read it at some point, but I don't need to have this. And then this is one I read and I did really enjoy, but I just don't feel the need to keep it around any longer, and that is Beasts and Beauty, Dangerous Tales by Shomlan Shinani. I loved this. It was very fun, short stories, but I don't need to keep it. The next one is A Harvest of Hearts by Andrea Eames. This is a beautiful book, edition of the book. But I ended up reading it and not really caring for it that much, so I don't feel the need to keep it around, so I'm going to get rid of it. As well as the Bookish Box edition of Court of Dragons. This is a beautiful edition. I do really enjoy it. I like the dragon scale edges and the cover. However, this book I loved, but the rest of the books in the series kind of went downhill for me, and so I don't have as special of a connection to it anymore, and so I'm going to pass this along. And they didn't continue doing the books also, which is crazy. The next one is a series. I read the first one, and I just lost interest because I didn't really feel the need to pick up the next one, and I'm not sure I'm going to get to do the series after all anymore. And that is Girl of Fire and Thorns by Ray Carson. Like I said, I've read this, didn't blow me out of the water, and I'm not sure I care to continue. There's a lot of books that I could be reading. So the second book is The Crown of Embers, The Bitter Kingdom, and The Empire of Dreams. Next are some Fairy Loot editions, and again, I have to stop saying this. I'm going to say this one more time, and then I'm just going to get on with my life. But a lot of these books I still have interest in reading, but I'm just desperately trying to downsize my own collection. There you have it. Thorn by Insitar Kanani. This is, what is it? The Red Pearl, The Princess and the Red Pearl or something retelling. One Princess, Two Fates, An Impossible Choice. It sounds really good, but I don't need this. Same with book 2, The Theft of Sunlight, and book 3, A Darkness at the Door. And then these are ones that I kept up with Fairy Loot, and then I just think I'm going to pass them along. The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker, and The Blood Orchid by Kylie Lee Baker. Kind of in that same vein, Faybound by Sarah L. Arifi, and Cursebound by Sarah L. Arifi, Fairy Loot editions. Then I found this recently, actually. This is the Illumicrate edition of Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I have the Owl Crate edition that I'm keeping, so I don't need to have this edition as well. Bride of the Sea by Emma Hamm. I love Emma Hamm reading the Dragons of Umbra series, but I just don't foresee myself picking this up soon, and if I do, I can do it another way. Together We Burn by Isabella Benyes. This one was actually a little bit hard for me because I did enjoy Isabella Benyes with What the River Knows. And this is about dragons, so I probably will read this at some point, but I don't need to keep this. Among the Beasts and Briars. This is also an Owl Crate edition by Ashley Poston. I might be intrigued about it sometime in the future, but not today. Furyborn by Claire Legrand. This is the Imperium trilogy, and this is about like angels and seraphim, I think. But I read, while I DNF'd, one of Claire Legrand's most recent books, and so I was a little bit scared of this, and I'm just going to go ahead and pass it along. The Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. I've read this. I loved it. I ended up getting the Fairy Loot edition. Bow Before the Elf Queen by J.M. Carroll. Might read this at some point, but I don't need this. Helen Hart. Follow Me Under by Helen Hart. I was sent this, and I think it's the second book in a series, and I'm probably not going to read it because it's the second book in a series. The Goldsboro edition of The Immortality Thief by Taryn Hunt. This sounds kind of interesting, but I'm not intrigued enough about it to pick it up, and I don't need to keep this around. Language of Dragons by S.F. Williamson. I won this in like a raffle when I went to the Onyx Storm midnight release, and I read this and liked it a lot, but I have somewhere over here, I have the Fairy Loot edition, so I don't need to keep this one, regardless of how beautiful the cover is. I think this is Owl Crate. It could be Fairy Loot. Either way, Star Daughter by Savita Thakrar. Again, one I was intrigued by, but it's been years and I haven't picked it up, so getting rid of it. An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. This was like one of the items in the Fairy Loot book box, like it was an extra book, and I just don't need to keep it. Fallen Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes. I read this first book and it was fine, but I wasn't sure how intrigued or invested I was in it anymore, so I felt like I didn't need to keep the other books. The second book is Rebel Spring, and the third book is Gathering Darkness. And then this one really intrigued me because it's around tattoo magic, and I really like that idea, but I haven't picked it up, and so I don't need to keep it around. And that is Beast Made of Night by Tachi Onyebuchi. Because I'm getting rid of the first book in this series of the Bookish Box editions, I'm also going to get rid of Autumn Trader by Hannah Parker. Moving right along, we're also getting rid of my Goldsboro editions of Dragonfall by R.L. Lamb, as well as Emberclaw by R.L. Lamb. I thought I wanted to keep up with the series and, keep getting these editions, but I've decided that I didn't love the first book that much, so even if I do continue the story, I don't feel the need to keep these, so I'm going to pass them along. Next is the Fairy Loot edition of The City of Dusk by Tara Sim, and the second book in the series, The Midnight Kingdom by Tara Sim. I do want to read this series, but I'm just not feeling an emotional attachment to keep these. Next ones I'm getting rid of because I got the first two Fairy Loot books in the series. I read the first one and didn't love it, didn't hate it, but I don't feel the need to keep them because of that. Because I was kind of like underwhelmed when I read it. And that is The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten, and I feel like I was hanging on to this in big portion because it's a very beautiful book. But I don't need to do that, as well as The Hemlock Queen by Hannah Whitten. So we're passing both of those along. Lumicrate edition of One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. I was planning on collecting a lot of these editions because I have the Atlas 6 Lumicrates, and then I just didn't care. So we're moving on. A Curse of Blood and Wolves by Melissa McTiernan. This is a Fairy Loot edition. Again, I think I might read this at some point, but I don't need to keep this edition. Mindwalker, Goldsboro edition by Kate Dillon. This sounds kind of interesting and fun, but I don't need to keep this edition. And A Lust for Blood by Casey Smith. This is actually a really cool edition of this book, but I have the paperback and I don't need both, so I decided to get rid of this and pass it along to somebody that would really like it. Alright, we're getting in the home stretch, everyone. Bear with me. These next ones are kind of like a shift of genre. These are ones like me and my husband had also wanted to read together potentially, but we can do that without having these physically in our home. So one of them is Foundation by Isaac Asimov, just a very extremely popular sci-fi book that I would like to get to at some point. The Humans by Matt Haig. I've read one book by Matt Haig and I've heard that this book is really funny, so I would like to get to it at some point, but I don't need this one. Ruination by Anthony Reynolds. I got this 50% off at Barnes & Noble. It's a League of Legends novel, and I think this is probably a really cool story, but don't need to keep this. The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. Again, one I would like to read at some point, but I do so much of my reading with audiobooks anyway that if I read this and I fall in love with it, I can always pick up another edition, like a paperback, cheaper at some point in time. Same with Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. Cool high fantasy that I would like to get to at some point, but it's not today. Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward. This thing is chunky for one, but it sounds interesting. Maybe I'll get to it at some point. The illustrated edition of The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This was more so for John. I don't think I'm going to really like Robin Hobb's works, so this isn't for me. If he wants to keep it around, he can. And then this is because I'm not really sure how I feel about Jay Kristoff, but even so, if I decide that I love these books, I can figure that out later. So I'm getting rid of the UK paperbacks of Nevernight, God's Grave, and Dark Dawn. Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I will never read this book. This is only for my husband, so if he wants to read it, he can. But this has sentient spiders in it. No. World War Z by Max Brooks. I've heard good things, I've heard bad things. I'm just going to pass it along. And Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. Again, I will read this. If I read this, it'll be an audiobook, but I've heard not great things about the series in general. Like, it goes downhill. So I don't know. So I'm passing it along. Those are my rapid fire unhauls. I apologize that I didn't stick on any of those very long and explain the plots about them, but I think some of them you've been around when I've hauled them or just in general in the book community, so you've heard about them. But like I said, I'm downsizing, so I'm trying to do my best to be cutthroat and not overthink. So that's what we're doing. If there's any of these books that you've read and you loved, or read and you hated, I would love to know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, but that is it for today's video. Please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.